Welcome, everyone. My name is Eric Esteves. I'm the Executive Director of the Lenny Zakim Fund. Today is our informational session about our 2021 grant cycle. What we'll be doing today is keeping it fairly brief and providing an overview about the Lenny Zakim Fund and who we are in our grant cycle process. To get started, my name is Eric Esteves. I'm the Executive Director. I'm also joined by Dominique Ramos, who's our Program and Office Administrator. So just to give you some context, the Lenny Zakim Fund was started in 1995. So this is our 25th anniversary year. Lenny Zakim was a local civil rights leader, former head of the ADL of New England, who was essentially diagnosed with cancer. And the fund was started in his honor. It initially was called the Lenny Fund, and really reflects his work and ideals. So instead of, a professorship endowed in his name, he said, let's give the money back to the community, and really empowering grassroots organizations. So that's been our focus, very specifically around social, racial, and economic justice for many years. It's a not great, kind of blurry photo of Lenny. But what you are here today is to learn more about our grant making process. So we have seven funding areas: access to food, housing, and economic security, child and youth development and education, civil and human rights advocacy and support, health promotion and accessibility for all, LGBTQ community support and organizing and support for immigrants and refugees, and violence prevention, criminal justice reform, and family outreach. So seemingly everything under the sun. But essentially it's really, there are many intersecting issue areas that touch upon social, racial, and economic justice. And those are the areas that we focus on in terms of funding. And it's limited to organizations that are based in Massachusetts who have a 501c3 status or fiscal sponsor. Many of our organizations are led by people from the communities they're impacting, who have small budgets. So as you may know or have read in our guidelines, in general, our max is about $350,000 in terms of budget size. So we really do try to focus on small grassroots organizations. Primarily, they have been in Eastern Massachusetts. There may be some people on from Western Massachusetts, so that's something that we're looking to expand, but it's not, we really have been pretty focused on Eastern Mass. But it's not just the Boston area. So we certainly have grantees or partners who are in areas like Lowell, Lawrence, Gloucester, Brockton, Randolph, New Bedford, Fall River, Attleboro, Worcester, right? So kind of an expansive of that, much farther beyond the 495 ring. Oops, messed up that slide. Sorry about that. I'll fix that. But that slide was supposed to say this year was the first year that we hit $1 million in terms of total grant making. Now, typically we don't have that much funds that we give out in a given year. So this year, so far, we gave out just under $600,000 in what's called our annual grant cycle. But then on top of that, we awarded about $90,000 as part of a special program called our Transformational Leadership Cohort, which was open to current grantees, and it was kind of an application process. And it was a leadership cohort specifically for organizations led by people of color. So we awarded about $90,000 there. And then so far this year, we have given out about more than $300,000 in emergency funds due to the pandemic. So this year, for the first time in our history, so it's also a record-breaking year for us, that we've crossed that $1 million threshold. So in terms of our grants, pretty straightforward. Our guidelines, if you've seen our guidelines before, we've streamlined and simplified the text. It's just 4 pages and really gives an overview of our organization and what we really are all about and focus on, but also what the grants are all about. So our grants range are from 1,000 to 20,000 is the size. We try to scale them, based on organizational capacity. Some organizations are new and trying to get off the ground, and that has been our kind of legacy as well. There are several organizations you may be familiar with, places like Partners in Health, which is a former grantee in its early stages. When we were in our early stages, that has far surpassed our budget size and budget limit now. And currently, organizations are eligible for up to 5 years of consecutive funding, what's called pending review. And of course, just like you, I am working from home. So I'm going to tell the kids that are running around to come here and be quiet. Thank you. Most of our grants are general operating support, and we do not support conferences, sponsorships, individual requests, or research and development. In addition to our grants, we also offer what's called capacity building support. So beyond the grants, we offer technical assistance. So typically, we offer seminars and workshops. Previously, we've offered an institute 2 times a year. This year clearly is a little different. So everything is a virtual webinar and seminar this year. We also offer pro bono legal services. So our office space is shared and provided by DLA Piper, a local but also global law firm that has worked with us over the years and provided pro bono legal support for many of our grantees over the years. We also provide mentoring, coaching, and then networking as well. So those are some of the things that we offer. And in terms of the process, the applications are due September 1st, and then we have kind of a review stage 1. And also just in terms of providing context. So right now we have what's called our Community Investments Committee. That committee consists of board members, staff, but also some external community members. We're actually actively working to expand that committee to increase our representation. In particular, we're reaching out to folks from some of our gateway cities so that we have kind of a better representation and balance on our review committee as well. So we're trying to make our own inroads towards what's called participatory grant making. So after September 1st, we start kind of doing a deep dive in terms of who's applied. There's some folks who, just naturally every year just aren't eligible or just are not a good fit for what we fund or are, aren't in Massachusetts. And then we have kind of a partial and full site review process. So we do phone calls, site reviews. This year it will be Zoom meetings or Google Hangouts. And then there's a final stage in December and January where, the applications that have come in are narrowed down. This year we are switching our process a little bit in that all current grantees, instead of them having to apply at this same early stage, their grant report that is due in December will now serve as their renewal application. And again, this is just a visual representation of our grant process. The initial stage, we have both new applications and renewals, just different timing. But there's a range of site visits, calls, and meetings, and then a final review. So typically each year we kind of have a goal of a number of organizations and how much we can fund, and we try to do our best to accommodate the funding needs and the range of requests that come in. And now for the grant application. So what we try to do is make this a minimal burden for you in terms of submitting this grant request. We know that we value your time and effort in putting together your grant application. So the cover, what's called the cover page, is kind of the basic details of your organization, mission, contact information, and if you're fiscally sponsored or not. So yes, you can have a fiscal sponsor or fiscal agent. And then we have some narrative questions, which takes up the bulk of the requests. And really the narrative, asks you about what are you seeking to fund, right? Some staff information. We ask for kind of funders of, currently, your pipeline of funds coming in that you anticipate. And then we ask for some financial details, your profit and loss statement and a budget. And then lastly, we ask for board information as well. So, for us, we do read and review everything because one of the things, when we talk about social, racial, economic justice and representation is trying to ensure that there's a breadth and depth of organizations that are representative of the communities they're serving. So this is a timeline of the grant process for this year, for 2021. You'll notice there's another info session next week, Monday the 20th at 1 p.m. And then the grant submissions are due by 11:59 p.m. on September 1st. And then essentially the fall is when we do site visits, phone calls, and meetings. Our current grantees, their grant reports are due in December, and typically in January is when we kind of do our final deliberations and then notify our 2021 grantees as early as we can in February. Typically we have an award ceremony that's in February. This year it was scheduled for March 30th, but naturally that did not happen, and everything was canceled 2 weeks prior. But hopefully at some point we'll be able to see each other in person again, and I can hug some of you and shake your hand at some point in the future. So that's our timeline for the grant cycle and process this year. So the way that we have our grants application process set up, we use an online tool or system called Fluid Review. Fluid Review is fairly straightforward in that you have to create an account. You'll see there in bold font is if you have previously applied, you can use that same account. If you're not sure, you can email Dominique with a request, either her direct email or office@thelennyzakimfund.org. The main address for Fluid Review is lzf.fluidreview.com, and we highly recommend that you do not use Internet Explorer, but you can use Firefox, Safari, and Chrome to fill it out. And you can return to it, so you don't have to fill it out all at once. Your account, you can log out and return back so that you can complete it. And you can complete it in stages. So there's documents that you can upload, and it also lets you know if something it needs to be started or something has been completed. So it kind of gives you milestones so that you can keep track of what remains for you to fill out. I tested it last week, so if you have everything, you can complete it in less than a day. So it is possible. We've tried to minimize that, and also even this year in this process, took out a few questions that we felt were redundant, just to kind of minimize how much information you needed to submit. With Fluid Review, if you do have technical problems with Fluid Review, we recommend that you just reach out to their help team directly. They are very friendly. This is the direct link. They call it the help desk. So Fluid Review has their own help desk. For login issues, they have a password reset option, but anything else technically related, you should contact Fluid Review directly. Dominique and I will take a look at it, but we probably won't know what to do, and we'll just refer you to the Fluid Review help desk. And lastly, once you submit everything in Fluid Review, there's nothing left to fill out. So now in terms of questions, these are some of the questions that organizations typically ask. So I just wanted to start there. and get those answered up front. So my organization's budget is over or nearing 350,000. What are my chances? Slim. So again, we really do focus on smaller organizations. We do have some organizations in our current portfolio that are over 300,000 in budget size, but certainly the average is, you know, closer to 100,000. We have many that have a budget of less than 100,000, many between 100 and 200. So I think on average it's closer to 150 to 180,000 is our current average budget size. And more details about that can be found in the guidelines. I think we provide that information. What kind of TA do we provide? So the seminars and workshops and institutes that we provided in the past, we provide, really it's the full range and spectrum of nonprofit management. So earlier this year, we've already provided some webinars that you can find on our YouTube page related to working remotely. Everyone is a Zoom expert now, but back in April, we weren't all. So we provided a workshop around using Zoom and working remotely. We did a fundraising workshop already. And then there were some other workshops that we kind of outsourced and provided information for. But other topics that we'll have coming up will be around financial management, board governance. There'll be an additional fundraising workshop, marketing communications. So there's certainly kind of a broad range of nonprofit management and capacity building workshops that we offer that fall in the range of TA that we provide. And we also just try to be helpful and share resources as incoming requests come to us. How much money should I apply for? That's up to you. So our stated range is between $1,000 to $20,000. So you can apply for what you feel you need. Again, we're not a huge funder, and we also are a public charity as opposed to a foundation. So we raise money in order to do our grant making. So that's why our grants are kind of on a smaller scale, and many organizations consider us kind of like seed funding in the hopes to grow. But on the flip side, there are some organizations that they have a sweet spot and a size that works well and allows them to be their most productive and best selves, and that's what works for them as well. So again, just with the understanding that $20,000 is our budget, is our grant maximum. What if I don't have a board approved current fiscal year budget? Submit what you have, what the budget that you're operating from, if your board hasn't met recently, but basically whatever budget is guiding your current operations. My fiscal year ends June 30th. Do I need to send a year-to-date and full year P&L, profit and loss statement? Yes, just because just the nature, we do have kind of some, you know, financial folks who notice discrepancies. So part of our kind of grant review process is, you know, to be diligent, but also not be overbearing. So it's kind of the balance of the two. And we also try to be helpful. So we try to provide feedback to organizations that apply as well. And we understand also up front that some organizations have development staff and some organizations have one person or a volunteer that wears multiple hats and is doing fundraising and grant writing in addition to operations and marketing and so forth. So we are mindful and respectful of those capacity demands. And then you also might be running a homeschool right now, right? Or taking care of an elderly or sick relative. So we certainly recognize all of those competing demands. So now what we'll do is open it up to the floor. I only see, well, no, that's not actually a question. So I don't see any questions that have come in just yet. So I'll stop sharing right now, and then we can go to kind of an open floor. Folks can raise their hands. I can take you off mute. If folks have questions about our grant cycle and process. And you can either raise your hand physically or use the reactions to let us know if you have questions. And this is a very quiet crowd on a Monday morning. So I'm going to give you a few more seconds. And if no one has questions, all right, we got a question. How lucky. All right. Could you talk more about being led by the people from communities we serve? So yes, so many organizations are just kind of hyper local and serving either subpopulations or immigrant groups. So it's not necessarily all organizations, but we try to be mindful, especially in this age of talking more about racial equity. That's something that we've always, social justice is something we've always put front and center. For me, I'm new here as an organization, and I'm new here as the executive director of this organization that's been around for 25 years. So for me, it's been a long-standing commitment, but I'm also now a face of that commitment as well. I live in Roxbury, and I'm trying to make sure I connect to all of our grantee partners beyond Boston's limits as well. But really, it's about the people closest to the pain often have the best solutions. So many of your organizations are doing just that. In Gloucester, there's Backyard Growers that really focuses on food security. There's organizations like Groundwork South Coast down in New Bedford that really focus on environmental justice, but is led by young people in New Bedford and Fall River. So it's really organizations that are really focusing on the communities, but those communities doing the work of solving the problems those organizations are working on. Mattapan,
Hi, I'll just put it in the chat. So this is listed, but maybe it could be helpful to others. So you could have 5 good areas, and each one has like 3 or 4 recommendations, all the same area, or choose 1, 2, yeah.
You just fall in one bucket. You don't have to fit multiple areas. You don't see nothing that like you're right? You want a bucket, that's really within one of those funders. With fund size before. Sorry. If you before, it's a little more than me. Can you tell me more about that? So I would say that might be a more case study. We have kind of a database and funding organizations have had over the years. So we have a list of all of our grantees from 1996 and beyond. That might be more excited. More than likely to be able to funding, just reading it just all at first glance. That's something we might just need to talk further about as part of due diligence as well. Organizations, grassroots organization, open I want to see that probably, yes. We would just need to submit proof of that application or that the status is pending. So, yes. Another question: how do organizations that the grant is most closed? So more than likely, the site visit will be like an online or a virtual Zoom. So really, a site visit, ideally, it is to see the programs. Our site visits, open. So site visits sometimes involve a small meeting, but it's really kind of observing and being a spectator of the regular operations and programs. Knowing that that's not happening nowadays, it mostly will be kind of a meeting of the organization. Maybe there'll be a program staff, organizational leadership, maybe a constituent, someone that is part of your program or membership. But we try to steer away from it being a performance and you feeling like you have to be on. But it's really to allow us as an organization and the folks on our review team to just get a feel for what it is your organization does and the impact you're having. Another question. We have, this is Mike with Boston Chapter Black and Pink. We have one organization. Our volunteers are mostly white queer folks, but we serve and take leadership from mostly queer people of color, people living with HIV who are incarcerated. Can you talk a little bit about the decision-making process for an org like yours? So the decision-making process, we have kind of a rubric or matrix of criteria with many steps around things like financial health, programmatic impact, leadership, programming. So there's not a specific distinction by organizations. One of the things that we're looking at is prioritizing organizations led by people of color, but it's not to the exclusion of organizations that are not led by people of color. So for example, in the last 3 years, this year in particular, I think the number was 57% of the organizations we funded were led by people of color. So there's a mix. So essentially, there have been many reports, even more recently, that have shown that the percentage of organizations led by people of color that receive funding is much less than that 56. So we're kind of ahead of the curve and have been, but we're just being more intentional about documenting that and also sharing those results. So just to be clear, it's not to the exclusion of organizations not led by people of color, but it's just making sure that we draw specific attention to that so that those organizations know that their funding is accessible and available. So I hope that answers your question. All right, I'm looking for any additional questions. And we will make sure to share out the slides as a PDF. I'll fix that one messed up slide, and we'll share these. We'll share it with you all via email as well, since you signed up via Sign Up Genius. And we'll post it on our site as well, and also the video of this recording as well. So, going once. I'll just do it like a countdown. Any additional questions any burning questions that folks have that we didn't get to? What do you expect a small organization board members to be size-wise? There's no expectation. Some boards are literally 6 to 7 people. Some boards are 16 to 25 people. So we don't have kind of parameters of an ideal board size. It's just that you have a board, right? So it's really that there's a board that provides that kind of advisory and fiduciary capacity of oversight. So there's no prescription around the size, but it's just that it exists and that there are people, real people that exist on it. All right. Any additional questions? All right, someone said yes, 1 sec. All right, so we have one more question coming in. Or if you raise your hand, you can just say it. But I don't see it. Hi, Anthony?
Yes.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
I was going to ask, is there any guidelines with my physical sponsor applying for this and then me applying for a grant on under a different category?
So your fiscal sponsor is also under our budget size?
Do you repeat that?
So are you saying your fiscal sponsor might also apply because they're eligible as well?
Yes, but it will be a different category that they will be applying for.
So yeah, I guess we'd have to explore that more on a case-by-case basis because it's possible, but also for some of the grant reviews, it would feel like the organization applying twice for 2 different programs. So I can't give you a definitive answer right now, just because it seems like more of a special case that we need to explore more.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Another question we have: if we have been turned down by the Zakim Fund in the past, can we call and get feedback about our previous proposal? Probably. You can reach out to Dominique, and we'd need to do some digging just because both of us have been here less than a year. We need to see if there's some documentation around your prior proposal. We can take a look at it as well. But we certainly hope to be able to give you that feedback. Another question: our org doesn't have a board. Is that an exclusion, or should we simply lay out our structure in the application? I would lay out the structure just because, you know, for us around capacity building, our focus is also on making organizations stronger. So we'd want clarity around how you are working and operating and kind of what checks and balances exist. So that's kind of really the impetus for kind of the board information submission. How do I get feedback from the last proposal? To those looking to get feedback on previous proposals, you can email Dominique. She'll post it to everyone in the chat. Her email is dramos@thelennyzakimfund.org, or if it's easier to remember, office@thelennyzakimfund.org. And you know, we'll need some time to kind of look up and try to find that old information. I certainly would love to give feedback to those who requested. Are there any additional questions? Going once. Going twice. And we're gone. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. I hope this was brief but informative. And again, once we kind of clean this stuff up, we'll get the video clip and the slides posted online. Thank you so much for your time and patience, and hope to connect with more of you soon. Have a good day.